Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video about my perspective on fear.
So, I personally have kind of an interesting relationship with fear. I definitely fear things, but a lot of the things that scare a lot of people are not necessarily scary to me. So I'm just going to be talking about that and how my fears may be different to some people's or similar to others, and kind of what informs those fears or lack of fear. And yeah, kind of just talking about the things that actually do scare me. And I figured this would be a good video to do since I do a lot of horror movie reviews, and I often mention in those that obviously these movies are not really scary to me since, well, I guess that's not obvious, but horror movies in general don't really scare me. So, or at least not in the way that they do a lot of other people. So I'll be talking about how they do affect me, and how they don't. So I figured it's a good place to start off with what actually does scare me. So the things that tend to scare me are more things that go on in the world, and things like existential kind of things, philosophical fears, and then the other things are just, kind of formed by the things that I read about and all that kind of stuff. So one thing that I will start off with: philosophical and existential fears. So things like worrying that our lives are meaningless, or the fear of constant struggle or constant sorrow and all that kind of stuff, which I personally have kind of accepted it as a part of life. I think that pain is inevitable, so you just have to learn how to balance it with the rest of your life. But yeah, things like that. And I know for a lot of people, there's a fear of that there is no God and all that kind of stuff, or they experience fear if they think about in their personal view of there not being a God. I personally am not religious, so that's not something I experience as much, but fear of the unknown. And in general, those kind of things are kind of freak me out if I think about too much. And then a lot of the main things that genuinely on a daily basis I'm scared about are things like climate change or natural disasters, nuclear war, fucking white supremacy, and just systemic oppression of all kinds, whether that be based on gender, race, ethnicity, language spoken, religion, anything like that. And yeah, the fact that people are starving all over the world, and yet we waste enough food to feed all of those people every year. So that is scary to me to think about. Currently, the future of the United States that I live in, it's kind of scary, even though we have a new president coming in. There's a lot going on right now. I'm currently recording this on January 7th, so okay. Let's move on to less big fears about things going on in the world, and things that scare me that probably scare other people also, like underwater caves and tunnels. Not my thing. Good. Scares the shit out of me to think about being in one of those and not knowing where to go and getting trapped underwater and dying. There are some true crime cases I've heard about that, and just caves in general, that if it's at least okay with normal caves above water, I am down to explore them if I'm with somebody who knows the cave's well explored, they know the safe places to go. Yeah, totally down with it. But I guess kind of a la The Descent, exploring caves that are not well known, and that you don't know what the fuck is down there and where you're going and when it's gonna get super narrow and stuff like that, doesn't make me comfortable. I'm not on that train. Yeah, I'd rather not. Let's see, along those lines, getting lost at sea and cruise ships in general, partially a sanitation thing because they have one day to clean the entire cruise ship after hundreds of people being on there and hundreds of more people getting on the next day, and that's kind of gross to me. And also just how many people go missing on cruise ships. So yeah. Oh, I should have mentioned also, obviously being sold into, human trafficking, shit like that, is fucking scary. So, that's linked to cruise ships also, because there's a lot of belief that the people who go missing on cruise ships sometimes are sold into human trafficking. Okay, let's get on to animals that I fear. Hippos. Hippos will fuck your shit up, let's just say. They're very territorial. They actually, I don't know if this is current, but at least up until recently, they killed the most people in Africa out of any animal besides mosquitoes. But yeah, so any animal, hippos kill the most because they are extremely, extremely territorial. They're extremely aggressive, extremely fast, both in and out of water. They fucking terrify me. I do not want to be on a boat that is attacked by a hippo. So, yeah, hippos. But Disney, you know, paints them off as like these fucking happy little dancing hippos in their tutus and Anastasia and like, or Fantasia or whatever. Yeah, no, hippos. Disney's done us dirty because hippos are fucking savages. You don't want to fuck with a hippo. Yeah, large cats. I love cats. I think they're beautiful. I love, like, you know, pet cats and stuff like that. But anyone who's had a pet cat knows you can be like playing with them 1 second, they're all happy and all that, and then they get a little feisty and they like might bite you or scratch you, and that can be bad enough with a small cat. With a large cat, you don't want to play with them chances. So, yeah, I respect them and love them and think they're beautiful, but I would like to give them their distance, and I don't think it's a good idea for people to have them as pets. Same thing kind of goes with gators and crocodiles and all of the crocodilian family. Gorgeous, amazing animals. They get the opportunity and they're hungry, they will snatch you out the side of the thing or off the water, out of the water, and eat your ass. So, yeah, no, I don't want to be death rolled by a gator. Yeah, so those are things that, like, I'm probably going to be most cautious about animals wise. And then as far as like insects and other things like that, mosquitoes, obviously. I don't want to get a malaria or a disease or anything if I'm in another country. And just in general, they carry tons of crazy diseases here. And along the same lines, I don't like roaches personally. I mean, I would be okay with feeding them to like a pet if I had one. You know, I'm looking into getting either a tarantula or tailless whip scorpion, so I would be down to feed them to something, but like they don't gross me out that much that I can't touch them, or not touch them, but like, you know, be around them. But yeah, I don't think anybody likes roaches in the context of seeing them, you know, anywhere near your house or anything like that, because yeah, like spreading germs and disease. And then I don't like wasps and hornets because I haven't been stung by one and I really, really don't want to. And they're fucking, dude, they're just gnarly. I don't know. Yeah, the fact that they're flying too. I mean, not a lot of insects and arachnids scare me, but I don't like the flying ones, besides bees and like butterflies and stuff like that. But like, you know, I don't know. Okay. That about covers it for pretty much all the things I can think of that scare me. In certain situations, I can be a little afraid of heights, but most of the time I'm pretty fine with it. It's, yeah, just like if I feel like really unstable, but I think that's everybody when it comes to heights. Okay, so now I'm gonna move into the things that I am not scared of, that I know many people who are scared of, and the explanation of why those things don't particularly scare me. It's not that these things would not scare me in any context. That is not true, but they don't scare me in the way that they scare most people or a lot of people. That's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to say I'm like, oh, I'm such a badass. It's just like, you know, okay, let's move on. So I'll start off with animals that it's very common for people to have phobias of, or even people who don't have that phobia have a general fear about these animals that I have learned to not be as afraid of. They're things that often when I was younger, well, at least, okay, so in the case of spiders, I was much more afraid of them when I was younger and even a couple years ago, but as I've gotten older and I've learned a lot more about them, and I've always been fascinated by them. I just was scared at the same time when I was younger. But yeah, the more I learn about them, I really don't have much fear about them, especially living in the United States, where we only have 2 medically significant spiders. And in the area that I live in, we only really have black widows. We don't really have brown recluses in Southern California. So, and I've been around black widows my entire life. I know people who have gotten black widow bites. They've been just fine. Not saying it's a pleasant experience, but for the most part, even with the medically significant spiders we have in the United States, if you get to a hospital or are just aware of it and watch the bite for a while, you're probably going to be just fine if you're a full-grown healthy adult. So yeah, that is a good example. Spiders and scorpions and things like that, not very afraid of them. Once again, place I live in the United States, not a ton of really dangerous scorpions. I believe we have bark scorpions, which can be dangerous, but yeah, just kind of being aware where you are. If you're hiking outside in the middle of the night or something like that, bring a black light flashlight. You'll stick out like a sore thumb, you know? Kind of, and just in general with a lot of the animals I'm going to be talking about, if you kind of leave them alone or are aware of how to interact with them when you do have interactions that can't be avoided, then you're going to be just fine. So yeah, with spiders, if you find them in your house or even on you or close to you, you can just, for one, walk away. And kind of directing the spider in a direction is very easy. You just kind of poke it on the butt with a stick or something, and they go the other way. Yeah, if you're very calm, if you find one like crawling on you or something like that, just be calm. Pretty much act like a tree, and they'll essentially think you're a tree and keep on their merry way. It's only really like if you freak out and start trying to kill them or anything that it's likely that you'll be bitten. And even then, most venomous spiders, or most spiders in general, they actually have to be pressed up against your skin in order to get their fangs in and actually bite you, because they just don't have that ability otherwise. So the large majority of venomous spider bites that happen, and probably spider bites in general, especially in the United States, are because we have smaller spiders too, that are, somebody leaves their clothes on the ground at overnight, they get up in the morning, they put their clothes on, they don't realize there's a spider inside. The spider doesn't know what's going on either, and so the person puts on the clothes, the spider is pushed up against the person's skin inside the garment, and therefore has the pressure, is scared because they don't know what's going on, they're being squashed, so they bite. That is when the majority of bites happen, actually. So yeah, as long as you're kind of precautious, try not to leave your clothes on the ground at night. If you do, shake them out before you put them on. If you got some boots that have been sitting in a closet for 6 months, shake them out. I like to toss them around a couple times. Then any spider that's in there is probably going to vacate. So yeah, just be cautious. Same thing with snakes. If you are cautious of them, and when you are in their habitats, you will probably be just fine. In the United States, we have... Okay, so I'm going to count rattlesnakes, even though there's many different varieties of them, as one. Rattlesnakes, we got copperheads, we got cottonmouths, and we got coral snakes. That's it. They're like in the South with copperheads and cottonmouths. It's a whole different thing. I don't live there. I have not lived there. I don't know exactly as much about them as I do about rattlesnakes, but in general, they don't usually go into people's houses. If they do, I don't know what to do with that, but yeah. So snakes in general, if you leave them alone, they will leave you the fuck alone. Just leave them alone. Like, at least where I live in California, we only have rattlesnakes. They literally give you a fucking warning saying, like, you don't want none of this. Go away. Leave me alone. You're getting too close. You're in my fucking personal space. Like, how much more? Okay. But yeah, I love snakes. Once again, more knowledge, more education about it, less fear. You really don't need to be afraid of snakes as people are. The large majority of snakes are not venomous, and they're not going to hurt you at all. Even the venomous ones are pretty shy. No snake also is ever going to chase you. That is a myth. There are literally people who are snake geeks like me who are constantly trying to see these snakes, and the snakes are running away from them. Like, that happens all the time. They don't want anything to do with you. So if you find a snake, especially a venomous one, in the wild, leave it alone. Go the other way. Go around. Do what you gotta do. If you find it at your property, then leave it alone, or call an expert to have it removed. Or most likely, yeah, if you just leave it alone, it'll go on its merry way. Obviously, if you have rattlesnakes making a den in your basement or under your house, then call an expert. You don't know how to deal with that. So, yeah, just in general, leave them alone, and they'll leave you alone. So, yeah. Sharks. I love sharks. I think they're gorgeous. All of these animals I think are amazing. I love them. Sharks, yes, like they are scary and all that kind of stuff to people, but they really don't kill a lot of people like a lot of people think they do. Fatal shark attacks are so rare, and especially fatal great white attacks pretty much never happen. And great whites are like the most feared shark, and yet when they do attack people, it's pretty much always mistaken identity. It is always mistaken identity. They think you're a seal, unfortunately. And once they bite into you and they realize, hey, this isn't a seal, they spit you out. Those first bites can be really gnarly, as I said in my 40 meters down review. But, it's just not like what people put it out, like the movies and all that put it out to be, where they're just gonna keep going and be relentless. And it's just like, yeah, we'd be screwed if that happened, but that's not the case. That's not what happens. The reality is, especially in Southern California, we swim with great white sharks, especially adolescent great white sharks, every day of the summer. Every hot day that we're out in the shallows, great whites are swimming right there with us. There's a recent experiment that I think from one of the universities. I think it's CSU Santa Clarita, maybe? I don't know. I don't even know if that's a CSU, honestly. But yeah, there's a CSU that they have been doing research and tagging adolescent great white sharks and seeing where they're going. And in that research, they found that there's tons of adolescent great whites that are swimming in the shallows with us, while there's tons of people out in the exact same areas in the same shallows, and nobody notices. They don't bother us, we don't bother them. It's pretty simple. I understand why people have this fear of this animal, but in reality, it's so overblown and irrational, the amount of fear most people have about these animals. We have precautions that we need to take and should take when we are around these animals or in their territories, but you don't need to fear about them on a regular basis. And like I said, as long as you respect their space, they're generally going to respect yours. So that's what I have to say about that. Also, sorry, meant to add this when I was talking about the snakes. Trying to kill a venomous snake is the most likely way to get bit by a venomous snake. So leave it the fuck alone. Kind of the same thing with a lot of animals. Trying to attack them is the best way to aggravate them and make them go after you. And honestly, most of the time, the only way. So, okay, so now I'm going to be talking about horror movies and just movies and TV in general, and why they don't really scare me, but I love them. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, I do a lot of horror movie reviews on this channel. I love horror movies. It's probably my favorite genre of movie overall, the one that I kind of go to when I don't know what else to watch, or when I just am kind of like bored and I want to watch a movie. I'm like, okay, I'm going to find a good horror movie. Even if it's a shitty horror movie, I usually enjoy it just because they're fun to laugh at, even bad ones. So yeah, love horror movies, but even the really good ones don't scare me. I don't have that thing where some people, are scared throughout the night or can't sleep. I mean, I have insomnia, so I don't sleep anyways, but the horror movie never has anything to do with it. I'm not walking around the house scared because it's dark, or looking around my shoulder checking that anybody's there, or, none of that. Like, it just doesn't happen. So when I was younger, there were a couple movies that when I first saw them, I was definitely on edge a little bit, and they definitely like psychologically kind of freaked me out a little bit, but I'll talk about those more in a second, when I talk about the movies that I really do love and kind of got to me or scared me in some way. But first I'm going to talk about why the kind of things in horror that are very common tropes that do not scare me, which is one of the main reasons that I don't find most movies or any horror movies scary. Ghosts and demons and Satanists and witches, those kind of things. Just flat out, no reaction for me. I mean, I can find the stories about them interesting and, like a lot of things about it, but just not scary to me. Ghosts, I don't really believe in. I believe in like energy staying after something intense has happened. I believe maybe in spirits. I'm not sure really. I haven't decided, but I don't believe in like negative ghosts really like haunting a place and all that. I don't believe in demons really. Yeah, no, I don't believe in demons. I think it's interesting to like study demonology and like, you know, different cultures, beliefs, and different demons and all that, but I don't believe in it. Um, so witches and Satanists I'm kind of gonna put in the same category, where there are real life witches and real life Satanists, but they're Wiccans and members of the Satanist religion. And I've done a lot of I used to be Wiccan, and then I've done a lot of research because of being Wiccan about Satanism, and I understand that they're just people who have their own spiritual and religious beliefs, and they're not scary. They're not sacrificing people. I mean, we saw witches come out to protest for Black Lives Matter over the summer. That was fucking badass. Like, you know, those are the real witches. They literally just like burn candles. Candles and like doing different ceremonies with different like symbols of things to, you know, call attention to some or bring energy to something, or, you know, whatever. It's not sacrificing people or riding around on a broomstick. It's mostly just lighting candles, honestly, as someone who is Wiccan. Yeah, Satanist, same thing. Like, so yeah, I understand that majority of the fear comes from fucking witch hunts, which there's a reason that witch hunts are called witch hunts, because there wasn't actually anything really going on.
Okay, so had an issue with footage getting corrupted, and so I just decided to refilm the end of the video because the beginning was fine, and just, you know what? Absolutely not the case. There is pretty much no like really documented cases of satanic ritual killings. Yes, there are people who have killed people and have claimed to be Satanists, but like as far as like a ritual really like killing, like it's not really very well documented. I mean, yeah, obviously there's people like Richard Ramirez who was all about the Satanism claim to, but you know, it doesn't really seem that he really took part in much of like the actual religion part, but more of the just wanting to look like a badass, kind of, in my opinion. Another thing with horror movies is that often with, even though slasher movies tend to be my favorite subgenre of horror movies, actually, I really enjoy them, but obviously don't find them scary, because just for so many reasons. For one, they generally, when the kill is about to happen, it's so obvious, so, you know, sometimes one will take me off guard and I'm a little surprised, but also that's an issue with horror movies in general, is we have jump scares that are just so not built up and not earned and just there for the sake of a jump scare, and that just kind of, it like surprises you and like obviously startles you, but it's not like a genuine scare. It's not like built on any sort of like psychological thing that like you can think about later and be like, oh my god, that was crazy, like what the fuck, you know? And there are times when it is really well used, like Haunting of Hill House season 1. If you've seen that show, you know what I'm talking about. Great jump scare, perfect, because the jump scare made sense for the story. It had an emotional motivation to the jump scare. Like, there was a reason for it. It wasn't just, oh, we're gonna fucking startle you for no reason, you know? That's some bullshit. I need to make sure that the shit is not gonna corrupt again. Okay, we're good. Hopefully. Also, another reason why I love slashers, but they're generally not super scary. The characters, there's usually like the killers, there's usually either too much mystery around them or too much information given, where it's just not really that intriguing, not that scary. It's just, yeah, I don't know, like, I personally find the things that are disturbing to me is like people's minds when like they're just really, really fucked up and you're just like, what? Like, how? Why? You know? That is a really bad explanation of that. But, you know, people like Edmund Kemper or Richard Ramirez or BTK and different people like that, like, where there's a lot of documented interviews with them, and they just, you know, wanted to torture people, pretty much. And that's, or yeah, like toy box killers, you know, there's a lot of people that it's very disturbing to just hear what they did and why they did it, and yeah. So generally true crime. Oh yeah, so I should mention, as someone who reads a lot of true crime, there are so many things in life that are real, and real killers, real serial killers, that are just so much like more frightening, because it really like gives you a glimpse into the really, really dark side of humanity that can be there if the certain elements are there to let that happen. It's just a lot more disturbing than really most things I've seen in horror movies. And leading into that, the horror movies that I really, really do love, and I would say get closer to scaring me than anything else, are generally the ones that have a lot of really psychological aspects to them, and you can kind of get in the mind of, not in the mind of the killer necessarily, but like you get a glimpse into that psyche, and it is really disturbing. Or sometimes even where the movie is so effectively done and the story is told so effectively that sometimes you might sympathize in a little bit with the killer, and that is, like a mind fuck where like you might even question your morals. Like, I'm just gonna say, Midsummer for me personally, by the end I was like, what the fuck? Like, I was so confused with myself. I was just like, huh? And obviously, like, in hindsight, like, overall, when you look at it, you know it's objectively wrong. But it, okay. Not minor spoilers, but for Midsummer. But, like, not much. But, yeah. Like, that movie fucks with you a little bit. And I like that. That's one of the reasons it's one of my favorite movies. Or also movies that make you examine yourself, like Get Out, for me, personally. And a lot of other movies like that. Just really effectively done horror movies, or horror movies that feel very visceral. They create an atmosphere that really puts you into this like dark and just like creepy mood, Texas Chainsaw Massacre does that really effectively. Seven does that really effectively, even from the opening credits. Hereditary is one of those movies that I really love, where I guess a lot of the time, the horror movies that I really love are horror movies that also have so much more. Because, like, I guess people think of horror movies as just blood and guts and gore. And that's not what it is. It can be a medium for these amazing stories to be told, and a way to tell a story about really traumatizing things, and use the horror aspect as a medium for that. And I think that is when horror is at its best. So that's why my favorite horror movies or horror TV shows are like True Detective Season 1, Haunting of Hill House Season 1. I love Season 2 too, but like Haunting of Hill House Season 1 I think is just the epitome of that, because it's just so much more, it's much more a family drama than it is a horror movie, but it uses its horror aspects to tell that story. And yeah, Midsummer, Hereditary, Parasite, where you just are so invested. It's such a roller coaster ride, and you're up and down, and I wouldn't even really call it a horror movie, but it is have horrific aspects to it. So, Cabin in the Woods is one of my absolute favorite movies. It plays with the horror genre and parodies it while also being a love letter to it, kind of. And it's just so much fun. And yeah, I just love that movie so much. Sigourney Weaver's amazing in it. The last quarter, where it's just fucking mayhem, I could watch on repeat in slow-mo, just trying to catch everything that's happening. Love it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, classic. Oh wait, okay. Let's see if I can do this without fucking everything up. Poster that I made, or print that I made in high school in art class. I stretched the canvas myself, and I made a stencil of Leatherface running after Sally, and it's not perfect, and then I drew behind it in Sharpie and like spray painted myself, obviously, and all that kind of stuff. So that is my Leatherface artwork. I also have lots of other Texas Chainsaw merch, because that is probably my at least longest running obsession with a specific horror movie. I love Texas Chainsaw. I think it's just perfect. And like many of my favorite movies, which like one I will talk about in a second, like the story behind the filming of that movie is just as crazy as the fucking movie. And if you've seen that movie, you know it's like really crazy. Also, just a side note, everybody thinks that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like the goriest, most obscene like movie ever, and like yes, it is disturbing, but it actually has so little gore compared to so many other movies. And it's just because of the name and the reputation that everybody's like, oh, it's so gory. But it's like, no, it's all implied. It's just really skillfully done. It was done on a super low budget, and it's an amazing movie. And if you haven't seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre because you're scared it's too gory, watch it. It's really not. It probably will still disturb you, but it's not super gory. So, yeah. And based on true life. Some of my favorite horror movies, like 3 of my favorite horror movies, Silence of the Lambs, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Shining, they're 3 of them. The main killer in 2 of them, and one of the main killers in the other, are all based off of Ed Gein, which is one of the most fascinating true crime stories, in my opinion.
I absolutely meant Psycho, not The Shining, when I was talking about the 3 movies that are inspired by Ed Gein that are also some of my favorite horror movies. So yeah, absolutely completely ignore that. Not sure how I said the wrong thing there because that's a pretty big fuck up, but ignore it. Thank you. Bye.
Good horror movies make you really feel connected to the character. You'll feel emotional when they're going through tough things. You're just invested, and that's, I think, a lot of the issues sometimes with bad horror movies is, even if they can be fun to watch, because like honestly half the time in bad horror movies I'm just happy to see certain characters die, because even in the good ones too, Midsummer, there was a lot of people I was like, okay, I'm okay with this, you know? But obviously in the movie, not like in real life. But yeah, so like a lot of the times in bad horror movies I'm just like, okay, cool. Yeah, this person's gonna die. I'm excited to like see how this is gonna happen. It'll be interesting. But good horror movies, a lot of the time also, there'll be at least 1 or 2 characters that you like really connect with and you can sympathize with, and you want them to make it, and so if they don't, it is gut-wrenching. I also want to mention Black Christmas and Us. Us is one great horror movie. I think it's, you know, a little more with the atmosphere, a little closer to the traditional horror genre, you know, like the more traditional, but I think horror, anything that like horrifies us and disturbs us, I think can qualify as horror. Black Christmas. I recently watched Black Christmas for the first time. I'd heard a little bit about it, but like for how fucking amazing that movie is, why had I not heard more about that movie? That movie is so good. It's literally like, I can think of the only movie that like genuinely, like, I think I had chills, like it made me feel uneasy. But the fucking killer in that movie is so creepy. Like, oh my god, it just creeped me out so much. It just made me want to crawl out of my skin and be like, oh no, I can't. Like the phone calls, no, can't. Like, I love, like, that actually like disturbed me a lot more than most horror movies do. So I really appreciated it for that reason. Like, that is so rare for me. So check out Black Christmas, the original, if you haven't. I mean, I watched the remake, and honestly, I didn't hate it like a lot of people do. I don't think it's a groundbreaking movie, but it was a fun, you know, slasher. I don't expect too much from most slashers these days. So if it's just kind of fun to watch and entertaining, I'm okay with it. Fear can be a really good thing, and it can keep us safe. It can keep us from doing stupid shit. We have fear for a reason, but fear can also be used to manipulate us. Like in propaganda, it's commonly used to manipulate us. And sometimes we just have irrational fears. A lot of the time, especially with animals we may be afraid of, more education about those animals will lead to less fear about them, because a lot of the time the level of fear we have is irrational. And so I think it's interesting to examine your own fears and see how reasonable they are, and if they're not super reasonable, try to conquer them, because it makes life a little bit more enjoyable. But it's fun to try to get scared every once in a while. I mean, I love anything that can give me a little bit of a fright, so even if horror movies don't do it, you know, roller coasters are great too. Okay, well, have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.